NFL college football analyst and former NFL player, and front office, pro personnel. Let me play something here with Mike Tomlin, and then you tell me, if you were his GM, how you would react to hearing this.
Would you still categorize this as a quarterback competition? If it is, how do you weight what happens on the practice field here versus what happens in a stadium?
Very much is a competition. What happens in stadium is weighted heavier than what happens in a practice setting because it's more game-like.
He just opened it up, so now it's on.
Yep.
Do you need to say it to the media if you've already probably said it to your quarterbacks?
I think in this case, Dan, he does, because remember when Russ was signed and when Justin was signed, like before this training camp started, his words were that Russ has the pole position, and everybody kind of took that to mean, well, this is Russ's job to lose. It's not really a competition, because you know how it goes. Like when you're trying to get a quarterback ready for the regular season, and you have in your mind that maybe one guy has the pole position over the other, that guy has to get the majority of reps, because otherwise, if you're trying to get two guys ready, you're getting nobody ready. So you got to give one guy more reps than the other. So now, if I'm Justin Fields in that situation where I was number two, you're sitting there, you're still trying to do everything you can to put pressure on the dude who has the pole position, but you kind of understand that maybe the season's going to go the way that coach laid this out with the initial depth chart, but I'm going to keep trying to pressure him, and maybe I'll take the job from him later. Now everything's different. Everything's different. And if I'm Russ, I'm sitting there going, man, I got to get my behind on this field quick, because I know that every day that Justin is taking reps that were designed to be for me, there's another day for them to go into personnel meetings, and I've been in these, where you meet every day as a coaching staff in the personnel department, and you run down every guy on the list. And I promise you they're spending more time talking about quarterback than any position. And you're going to have people, you're going to have Arthur Smith, and I'm not speaking for Arthur, but I know Arthur loved Justin. I talked to him down at UNC's Pro Day watching Drake May. I promise you he's sitting there going, hey, man, Russ got to get out here, because we don't have anything really. We have no allegiance to either one of these guys. So if we really want to make this a competition, Russ has to compete. And see, that's the thing now. This is totally up there. I would not be shocked in the least. It's probably going to be one of the most watched preseason games of this weekend when they play tomorrow, when they play the Texans. That is going to be, I believe they play the Texans, right? That is going to be something that all of Pittsburgh is going to be watching, because I have a feeling, based on my conversations, that if if Justin can continue to ascend like he is looking in practice, he's going to start week one.
Wow.
He's going to be an opening day starter.
See, I thought
he was going to be a starter at some point anyway.
I did too, but I thought you have to start Russ, and then if you go to Justin, it's easier to go back to Russ and Justin goes back to the bench, as opposed to the other way around.
But you know what? In a normal situation, I totally agree with you. In a situation where this was a guy who has a lot of equity built up in an organization, and you know what, he has a history, he's won some games, he's in great. In this case, look, yeah, there's one guy who has a bigger resume, who won a Super Bowl, who came close to winning another one, but he didn't do that for you. So, like for me, and like how you phrased this question in the beginning, like when you said, look, if you're the GM, I'm kind of reminding Mike of that. Hey, we don't owe Russ anything. We don't owe him the benefit of the doubt. We owe ourselves in this organization to put the best guy out there, regardless of how this plays out. And I think we say all the time, the best ability is availability. This is one of those cases where that could be the deciding factor.
Give me the team who needs to trade for Brandon Ayuk.
The team that needed to was New England. They needed a guy like that. Drake May needs a guy like that. Alex Van Pelt, offensive coordinator, needs a guy like that. Gerard Mayo needs a guy like that. New England needs a guy like that who can average over 18 yards per reception, who can take the slant and go 90, who can catch the 50-yard bomb down the sideline. They needed him. However that fell apart, it fell apart.
Well, it seemed like they gave him an offer that he couldn't refuse, but he refused it.
He refused it. Right, exactly. I mean, that's what it seems like. You're right. They needed it, and they tried to they took their shot. And that was something I'd been talking about on TV. Like, New England has the cap space and they have the draft capital and they have the need. It makes perfect sense. If you're Brandon, you're sitting there going, okay, man, I don't know what what Cleveland's supposed offer is, and I don't know where San Francisco sits as far as what they've already offered him, but it's probably safe to say that they're not in the neighborhood of what New England was.
Yeah, $30 million. It just feels like if I'm Pittsburgh, I got to get him. I got to keep him away from Cleveland as well, but it's twofold there.
I'm with you. It would be a real departure from what Pittsburgh normally does, especially at that position where they have drafted and developed better than anybody in the league at that position. But I'll tell you what, if they did, oh boy.
Okay, how does that change what your expectation level would be for Pittsburgh if they got Ayuk?
Look, I'm someone who believes, and it's been running at the mouth about the fact that I believe that wide receiver has become the second most important position in all football, behind quarterback. And that's not to diminish pass rusher or offensive tackle, but I just believe that these guys, because of the way they can flip games on their head with one play and generate excitement in terms of bringing in other players and bringing in fans and generating money, they can do it better than any other position other than quarterback.
Would you put them ahead of Baltimore if they got Ayuk?
Yes. Baltimore has a lot of change. A lot of change now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. On offensive line, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how Derek fits in. We'll see how the wide receiver core continues to develop. Yeah, I would right now.
Okay.
Pittsburgh is not – what's interesting now, Pittsburgh's not afraid of Baltimore. They love playing Baltimore, and their record speaks for itself, how they have played that football team in particular. I'd put them – yeah, it would be like a three – it could be between Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cincy, Cleveland. They're all right there at the top. That's a toss-up. And Pittsburgh has as good a shot as anybody to win the North for sure. If they get Brandon. Even without him, they do.
Louis Riddick of the Mothership, NFL college football analyst. How many Super Bowl contenders in the NFC?
Look, you got Philly. I think you got Green Bay, Detroit for sure in the North. I don't know if you have any in the South, maybe Tampa. So you've got 1, 2, 3 plus San Francisco, maybe the Rams. So there's probably 4 really that right now you could really hang your hat on. Dallas is a fringe Super Bowl team. Minnesota, we'll see what happens with their quarterback position. Tampa Bay is going to be right there.
You like Philly more than Dallas?
Yes, for sure. And I know that there's a lot of talk coming out of there right now. Like there's a lot of stuff going on right now about last year, which as if last year even matters this year, but that's all they're talking about there right now. On paper, the team is loaded, man. They're loaded. And really, that's all we got to go on right now is how teams look when we're evaluating their roster. Dallas, you tell me how the offensive line is going to play and whether the running game is going to be able to support Dak and how CD is going to look when he gets there. Is the run defense going to be better than it was last year? Is the front seven stronger down the middle? Because it was an Achilles heel for him last year. So I don't know. Tampa, I can tell you this though. Tampa has done some work. The offensive line is going to be strong. Baker, we'll see we'll see what happens now that Dave Canales isn't there, who everybody loves, and we'll see what he does for Bryce in Carolina. But Tampa's defense is going to be legit. And Atlanta could be sneaky now. They really could. And see, that's what there's always a team that kind of sneaks in there.
Always.
Oh, and the Rams, hey, Matthew doesn't get enough credit. Sean has now, his 4th different defensive coordinator. Now that he lost Raheem, I mean, he's been churning through defensive coordinators in a good way for good reasons. But I really think there's 4 that are legit. We'll see what happens with the rest.
The Chargers situation with Harbaugh's philosophy to take that Michigan style and now bring it to the Chargers, what does that mean for Justin Herbert's development, even though Jim played the position in the NFL? But it feels like he wants big offensive line. He wants to run it down your throat. He wants to play that tough defense. What's that mean for Justin Herbert?
Yeah, you know what? This is one of those where you're right. Like, what does it mean for him as far as can he be a 4,000, 4,500 yard passer, 35 touchdown guy? you would probably think from a statistical standpoint, that's not going to be what it's going. That's not how it's going to manifest. It's going to be about, can they just win more games? Can they get into the playoffs, win more games, maybe to be a conference title contender, a real one? And I think you're going to have to be willing to accept that. Like, what, as a Charger fan, or even as ownership, as a GM, are you willing to take your prized possession and say, look, statistically, he's going to fall down a little bit in terms of how much we put on him, because of how much we put on him, but we gain the ability to really contend? I think that's obviously, I think, something they're willing to do, because ultimately in the NFL, that's all that matters, is winning Super Bowls. It's just, you know how that goes, Dan. You know the deal. I mean, Dan Marino put up numbers every year, but the team couldn't win, and so he's not even talked about as a guy who's one of the greats.
Well,
So,
I was wondering about this before I let you go, that Tom Brady won more Super Bowls.
Yep.
Is there a chance that Patrick Mahomes can be a greater quarterback if he doesn't match Tom Brady's Super Bowl numbers? Does that make sense?
Yeah, there'll be people who fall on both sides. There'll be people who already think, look, he's a greater talent than what Tom was. But
so is Aaron Rodgers.
Right. But right. So, but the reason why Tom's considered the greatest, and that's not to diminish how he was as a passer, because he was a great passer. But ultimately, quarterbacks it's about winning. So unless he can match and or surpass it. Look, if Patrick, given his talent, Dan, can match or surpass Tom's winning, I don't know if anyone will ever come or be able to top that. Because that's like a supernova, so to speak, right? I mean, you had maybe the most talented thrower, player, leader ever at the position, who was also the greatest winner. You're talking Jordan type stuff now.
The worst team in the NFL this season will be?
I hate this question. You're trying to sick a whole fan base on me, man.
You're being objective. You're an analyst.
I know.
You can say Carolina. Nobody's going to be mad at you.
Yeah, you know what? But they've done so many good, and everybody loves I don't know, Carolina or New England.
Okay.
One of those two.
Oh, so now you're gonna piss off two fan bases.
Yeah, I know. I mean, why stop at one? Yeah.
Always great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us, Lewis.
You got it.
Lewis Riddick, ESPN NFL college football analyst.